I've been getting a lot of questions from new owner-operators that want to know a little more in depth on how to pick loads from a load board. I know a lot of people don't care for load boards, but it's just a giant game to me that makes me money, so I don't mind it. I probably check the load board more than I even check my Facebook, which we're not going to discuss that. Before you even start looking at the load board to decide what you want to pick, what you're interested in, because there's a lot of things you got to think about. You need to know what your cost per mile is. Different people use different formulas for that, so you can find what works best for you. Just to keep it really, really basic, like the most basic you could have it, just break it down for now, just to start with what it costs in fuel per mile to run your truck. The current load my truck is on right now, it's 77 cents per mile, which makes me very happy because not 2 months ago, it was at $1.31 a mile. Your biggest overhead is always going to be fuel. So being able to break it down in this way is really going to help you. Of course, rates are always going to go off what you pull, whether it's dry van, flatbed, reefer, what have you. Different niches have different price points. So just because it's $7 a mile to move hay doesn't mean you're going to get that to bring tomatoes to Cisco. See what I'm saying? Now, I am in no way, shape, or form sponsored by absolutely anybody. So everything that I'm about to show you, just the tools that I use for every day. This is one of my favorite, sorry, I'm super shaky, one of my favorite calculators. This is how many miles this run is, about what my truck gets, and the average for the fuel for the states that I'm going to be running through. So this is what it's going to cost me in gallons. This is how much the fuel is going to cost me overall for this trip, and here it will break down my fuel cost per mile. It goes without saying that what it costs to have your truck run down the road per mile should also include maintenance and other things. But we're keeping it, this is beginners 101, very basic. Walk before you run. Now that you have an understanding of how much it's going to cost you to operate simply to tote this load around, now it's time to start thinking of a few other things. So you have an idea of what it's going to cost you per mile, and now you're looking at the loads, the rates, deciding which looks better for you. The next thing you're going to want to consider when you're looking at your load is deadhead. You're also going to want to consider your deadhead on the other end. Do you have a load waiting for you at the end of this stop? If you do, how close are the deadhead and fuel? And time, which should go without saying. There's never enough time. Deadheading and fuel are going to be a massive part of your overhead, but this is something that you can control to an extent. So making the most out of these two situations, absolutely critical. It's going to pay off in the long run. And you don't want to spread yourself too thin, especially if you're just starting, especially if you're just new. You need as much in the bank as you can get. So any way you can save a few pennies, it's worth it. The next thing you need to consider, of course, is weight. How heavy is it? The lighter it is, of course, the better. You're going to use less fuel. It's less wear and tear on your brakes. But I mean, it's trucking. Heavy is normal. We know that. But still, something to take into consideration. Another way for you to manage those overhead costs, especially your first year as an owner-operator, your overhead costs are going to make or break you. You get yourself into a tight spot once, and it's hard to come back from. So now that you have all these tools, you know what to look for. Now that you understand your operating costs and you have some ways to help diminish that overhead as much as possible, now you can start looking into your loads. Obviously, you can only start from so many places. Where you are is where you're going to start, of course. It's where you're going that's going to have an impact. Because, you can find a great load with a good rate that pays well, but who cares if it's going into the middle of nowhere that doesn't have a niche for whatever you're pulling to get the fuck back out. So generally, when I'm looking at a load, if it's in an area that I'm not familiar with, I will bring the load board up and look in that area where I'll be delivering to see what there is for freight moving out and what it's paying. Is it stagnant? Are all the rates really low? Or does it seem like it has some good options? Of course, don't book your next load yet. You're not ready for that. One step at a time. But now you have an understanding of what's going on. There's different areas of the country or different hubs for different things. I almost never worry if I can get the truck around like Kansas City or Houston because there's shit moving. But what about like Broadus, Montana? I would be fine there, but I mean, not everybody would. So you need to have an understanding of your niche and what its big hubs are, where a lot of the freight moves, and to where, what lanes are being worked. Because a great load in is awesome, but if it leaves you stranded and fucked, it doesn't matter how good it was because now you have a problem. Not that it's a big problem, but it's something that could be avoided, and that's also where you can avoid extra deadhead and manage those fuel costs. As much as you can minimize your overhead and your fuel cost and your wear and tear maintenance, the better, because they're gonna be there. They're always gonna, that fuel pump and the mechanic are always gonna have their hands out. Find a way to keep a little bit of that money in your own pocket because you're gonna need it. All right, so now you have a load. You know you have something in your sights. You found one that you want. Now is when the fun starts, right? Before you call that broker up, email them, whatever, to take that load, I want you to do a couple of things. If you have a factoring company, check them with your factoring company and make sure that they're approved. If you don't have a factoring company, which is totally fine, personal preference, still do a background check on them. If they have shitty reviews, save yourself the headache, because there's going to be a headache. Also read a few reviews, read some of their really good ones, read some of their poor ones. When were they posted? What were the issues? Is it something you're willing to overlook? Or would it be better to skip it? 9 times out of 10, just skip it. There's always more freight. Now, if you listen to anything I ever tell you, I want it to be this. Never, ever, 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 ever take the posted offer. No, we're not doing that. I enjoy the art of haggling a little bit. I like to see how I can get my way, which, do what you love, right? But don't ever take their first offer. There's always more money on the table, every time. Don't be afraid to hear the word no. Don't be afraid to find different freight. I don't care if it pays the best rate you've seen in 2 weeks. You better ask for a couple hundred more. Right back to that bottom line. Side note, no one overly enjoys dealing with brokers, but you catch more flies with honey than you do shit. I have a great personality for this. I genuinely enjoy it. I'm good with people. It's easy to be nice, but if you try to take advantage, of course you need to have a backbone and be firm. There's a difference in being a bitch and being firm. Try to be professional. I promise, these guys get yelled at all the time. Some of them for good reason. You would be amazed what a friendly tone can do. It goes a long way. And it's always good to have a big network. You never know when you're going to need somebody. All right, you're far enough along that you're going to have your rate con come over. Look it over before you sign it. Make sure it works for you. Make sure you read the terms. Are you going to get fined if you don't download their tracking device? Are they saying that they want hourly updates? I know that sounds asinine, but they'll do it. Make sure you read the fine print. That rate con is meant to fuck you. That is not for your benefit. That is for theirs. Put a tonneau in there if at all possible. It's possible. Put a tonneau in there. Most times you're never going to need it, but when you do, you'll be thankful that it was lined out in your contract. Another thing to look over is detention. Make sure their rules on that are clear as well, because again, that rate con is not there to protect you. It's for them. It can benefit both, but you have to be smart about it. And that's it in a very simple, basic nutshell. That is how to start picking your own loads, how to dispatch your own truck. There are a lot of advantages to have somebody else dispatch for you, but you save money when you do it yourself. There are a ton of wives just like me who dispatch their husbands, which we should get extra shiny things on Valentine's Day, our birthday, anniversary, and Christmas, because dispatching your husband, not for the weak. No. If I didn't cover something in here that you would like me to go deeper on, please let me know in the comments. I'm always more than happy to clarify. But now you know, you're armed with a little knowledge. You can go out there, take your piece of the pie.